It's the Kink Consultant podcast, where we're turning up the heat on all things kink and dating, relationships, and pop culture. So close the door, plug in your headphones, and let's get down to it. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Kink Consultant. I am joined by Aubrey Aust, and she is a master's student at NYU working on a thesis on what creates safety in relationships and using BDSM and kink as one of the examples of how people are negotiating and communicating to create safety within their relationship. So once I heard this was the work she was doing, and although the thesis itself isn't totally focused on BDSM and kink, I immediately needed to have her on the podcast. So welcome, Aubrey.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your thesis? And you're studying, I believe it's relational psychology?
Relational psychology and philosophy, correct. Actually, my formal background is in political theory. I was really fascinated by systems of power and how they shape our inner lives, our longings, our limits. I studied Arendtian political theory and a lot of the works of Hannah Arendt. And so I was writing a lot about desire, control, intimacy, surveillance, how desire is constructed and how societal factors contribute to that. I started to pivot into relational psychology when I came to the realization that the systems that we're navigating, of course, is a political aspect to that, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they're relational. And once I started getting more interested in how these systems live in the nervous system, in our attachment styles, and the way we move toward or away from love or connection, I started to see the psychological aspect of that and wanted to bring it down from the macro level, the big political level, to more of the interpersonal relational level. Now I'm out NYU pursuing my master's degree, where I'm ultimately studying what allows us to feel safe in relationships. That's the very simple question behind everything that I'm doing. And so I'm exploring that through frameworks like attachment theory, polyvagal theory, somatic psychology, and the ethics of care. What does it truly mean to care for someone? What's the morality behind that? And so I'm using BDSM in the kink world to see this as almost a relational laboratory because it externalizes what most relationships suppress in a lot of cases.
Yes.
Power, vulnerability, the need to negotiate safety in real time. And so it's this incredible container for me to explore all of these topics in a really fascinating way.
My mind is just like firing off 1,000 questions. The safety aspect in relationships, is that something that everyone needs to be aware of, right?
Yes.
Like, I think on a subconscious level, we probably are. We know whether or not we feel safe in something, but do you think this is something that can be picked apart and explored for every couple?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And how do we do that, right? Specifically within the context of BDSM, you have a site where those relational dynamics are made visible and explicit, right?
Yes.
So that's what makes this such an interesting modality because power is not assumed. It's negotiated. We don't imply consent. It's constructed. And especially vulnerability, which is so huge to what I study. It's not hidden, but it's held. We're naming a lot of it in a lot of cases. So in most relationships, just blanket term relationships, we aren't really naming those power dynamics at play. They still exist, but they're not brought to the forefront, right? And a lot of times we inherit those dynamics. We perform those dynamics, but we're not actively examining them. So when
What does it look like when we're performing them, but not examining them?
Yeah, great question. It's our everyday scripts. It is what we have inherited. It's largely cultural. It can be so much of what we grow up with, what we've come to expect. And if that fits you, that is absolutely fantastic. Go with that. But there's also value to questioning, are these really serving me? Is this how I want to go about my life? Is this making me feel safe, held, all the things that we want to feel relationally? And it's worth taking that step back, not necessarily in order to make change, but just to examine it for yourself.
That's kind of heavy work.
It is.
I mean, I very much specifically focus on kink and BDSM, and it's a finite time, like even in 24/7 relationships. But this is about how you move in the world, even like what preconceived notions culturally you're taking through everyday life and how that's affecting your experience in partnership.
And that's why the political theory background that I have really does contribute well to this, because at the end of the day, there are so many societal factors at play in how we desire, how we're allowed to love, and how we can move about the world, right? And so that's something that we can't ignore when we're talking about relational safety. So all of that kind of comes together in realizing, yes, we have autonomy and choice, and we can make these decisions, but also consciously recognizing the factors that contribute to how we go about that.
How can we get better at that?
Great question. I'll tell you when I'm done with my thesis.
I'm like, can you just give me the answer of like how I can incorporate this in my life and go be better?
It is one that is ever unfolding and one that I'm trying to answer right now. It's the willingness to examine. And I think it comes down to that at the end of the day, that each and every one of us has things that we are hesitant to question because we are scared to know the answers. And our brains are neurologically wired to protect us. It's a defense mechanism. And so we shouldn't fault ourselves for the things that we put in place to naturally protect ourselves. But it is worth asking ourselves the question, is this protecting me or is this preventing me? And that doesn't mean, like I said, there have to be immediate changes to anything. It's just a worthy examination into your own personal life to see if the things that you're doing are ultimately serving you.
I always say with kink, it starts with curiosity. When someone tells me, oh, my partner's not kinky, I'm like, well, are they curious? Because I'm a firm believer in everything, every aspect of my life. If I'm dealing with a curious person, it's going to go well, right?
I love that.
So it sounds a lot like your willingness to inspect and ask questions. That's so much a part of this too. So it's sort of the curiosity extends into this. I want to know, are there specific questions that I could start asking myself that would help me start to uncover it? I mean, I'm definitely guilty of protecting myself from asking the questions that I might not want the answers to. The way I think that also presents, if I may share it, is that I immediately put up a defense of, I'm going to be fine no matter what. So you be there and do your thing. And you're probably imagining this is an avoidant attachment style.
I would love to get more into attachment styles because I have a lot of spicy thoughts on attachment styles. But first of all, I want to tell you, you are not alone in this. That every single person has that experience of those internal questions of saying, what will this bring up for me? And we treat attachment styles like it is a clinical lifelong diagnosis. And attachment styles, of course, yes, there's a huge part of how we are raised in early childhood that contributes to our lifelong attachment patterns and how we generally move about the world. It's great to recognize that. And it's important to know that attachment styles are not fixed. They can change over time and they change relationally. And so it's based on the people in your relational ecosystem constructing those fields of safety that either contribute to a world in which you feel like you can cultivate that safety or that make you feel unsafe. And so based on that, your attachment style can shift throughout your lifetime. So when it comes to, how do I start? How do I even start this form of inquiry, right? Because these are big, scary questions. It's about asking what happens when people choose how they want to be held, how they want to be led, how they want to be surrendered to. And I'm talking in terms, of course, that would apply to BDSM dynamics or kink dynamics, but it can also apply to societal scripts at large. What happens when you name your needs? We can take this outside of kink. And just apply it to the day-to-day.
And I like that because I like taking it outside of kink because as soon as you put it into the kink context, I'm like, yes, I get it 100%. Relating it to the outside world should be so simple, right? Because I think once you get into kink, you see power exchange everywhere and you just start to focus on it. But I'm trying to think like outside of the kink part of it, how does it apply?
Because negotiations apply in every single relationship in your life. Whether it's recognized or not, there's a power dynamic there.
I hate to think of it that way, but it's true.
And it is confronting those tough realities. That's the first step. And when you're able to do so, then you can start thinking about, okay, considering the forces at play, how do we incorporate regulation, rupture, repair, mutual recognition, the things that you need to feel safe in those relationships. But in order to do so, we have to rethink what we mean in terms of freedom. What does trust mean to us? And from an attachment perspective, it can offer something really radical because when you have that awareness, it offers you this structured container where the body can feel safe. Even, in kink, it can be the content of the experience is really intense, but that awareness, whether we are applying this to kink or to the larger picture, that's what makes that experience transformative.
When you said the forces at play, right? I immediately went to external factors that society cares about as opposed to the internal ones. Like society cares about who has more money, who has the better job, who's better looking. Those types of things. Are those some of the forces at play in terms of this? Or is it more the emotional side of things?
Absolutely both.
Yeah.
And they are both so present and both so valid. And they're constantly intertwined and at play. And it depends on the individual, on the circumstances. We are all dealt a certain deck of cards at birth, right?
Yeah.
And that largely influences how we move through the world. And so it's recognizing how that influences your day-to-day experience, but also realizing what it looks like to deal with that shadow self and coming to terms with the things that sometimes we don't want to talk to about ourselves, right? It's not something that can be forced. We aren't ready to ask those questions until we come to them ourselves. But it's I love what you said about curiosity and that point of inquiry, because I think that is so central to any type of play. But even if you're just going for self-examination, that has to be at the center.
I love exploring and digging into the shadow self because that's where all the interesting stuff is. Not always the good stuff, but the outcome of exploring it is good. It's the shadow self. How much of that is making its way into your work, if any? Because it is sort of like a hokey science, not science even, it's sort of like a hokey concept.
Right. So, I am big on the Jungian shadow self and everything that we've disowned, our hunger, our rage, our tenderness, our need. And so I think it largely plays into our need for safety, because a lot of the things that we're scared to name are the things that we need the most. And so often it's looking at the parts of ourselves that are shamed, that are ignored, or that are even punished in early relationships. And like you said, that can be incredibly difficult. And so it's the opportunity to invite those parts to come forward, not to take over, but just to be seen or expressed or related to. And that integration, it's not about winning or losing it, but it's about bringing those inner dynamics into the light, into that relational awareness. It's not even about the act, it's the meaning underneath. And knowing, can I still be desired here? Can I still be safe in this space? Can I still be loved? And so it's about providing language and structure to explore those questions. So I am largely dealing with concepts of the shadow self because I think it's such a pivotal role in how we go about even having the ability to name our needs.
You just said something about providing language. And I think that that is one of the biggest hurdles. It is one of the biggest blockers to people being able to do this work is language around feelings. It's not taught. Like you're taught the basic ones of like, I'm sad, I'm happy. But to explain, I'm feeling like I'm not enough and that's affecting my nervous system right now. Can you see me and tell me that everything's okay?
Right.
No one taught me that sentence. Do you know what I mean? I pieced it together over time. I think the language piece of it is that's the part that I even struggle with, you know, and I know a lot of my clients struggle with the language. Is that something that your research is looking into? Like how to communicate this through, we're talking specific words. Like that's part of the issue.
Yeah, that is such a fantastic point. And you're right, it's not something that's taught in our day-to-day. Because first of all, I am inspired by the growing awareness around mental health in general, which I think is fantastic. Naming needs, naming what's going on. We often don't get past the I am happy, I am sad level, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot that's still shoved down underneath. Part of my research is talking about trust built through conversation and what that looks like and what the body needs in order to feel safe and open up, because oftentimes we process our emotions physically before we're able to do anything psychologically. When you feel like, that clenching in your chest or your heart rate speed up, or there's just a feeling that comes over you that you cannot pinpoint because logically you're saying, I can't really lock this down, but there's something in my body that I feel coming up that I can't ignore, right? That's affect theory. That's how we are responding in response to someone else's nervous system. And so social baseline theory teaches us that we regulate ourselves based on our relational environment. We are relational creatures, right? So we naturally respond and regulate our nervous systems based on those in our relational environment. So when it comes to using that language to express it, of course it's going to be difficult. And we can't even name those emotions for ourselves, but we're just like, something feels kind of funky in my body.
Yes.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's challenging, right? And so there is a component of introspection to that of, hey, maybe I need to take a step back for myself, sit with this feeling for a moment and recognize what's coming up for me. And even if you can't name it in that moment, can you feel it?
And I don't want to minimize that feeling part, right? Because I also think that's something that we learn. We are not taught to pay attention to our bodies in that way. It's like,
yes,
the same way sad, happy, sick, good. Those are like
Yes.
the two things that you get. I'm certified through Somatica, which is a sex and relationship coaching course. And it really opened up my world into checking into your body. But like, that's why I personally can never take it for granted, because I had to learn it from a course, and now I work with my clients on it, and you're speaking about the same thing. And it's just, to me, I'm like, let's not skip over how hard it is, or how it's something that you also need to teach yourself. Similar to the creating your own sentence about how you're feeling, you need to think and figure out how to feel. Where am I feeling in this in my body? Which is such an important question to ask. And that's why I'm like, my PSA on ask yourself that and get into the habit. Hey Kinksters, did you know we have a book club? Join the Kink Consultant crew every month to read spicy, kinky books and chat with other shamelessly curious minds. I started this club because I was tired of reading kinky stories with no one to talk about them with. It's the perfect place to meet other book-loving Kinksters, share your hottest takes, and help pick out our next filthy read. So come find your people. Join us at patreon.com/AmandaDames/membership.
I love that you brought up somatics and somatic psychology, because part of my research is also speaking with therapists and saying what is coming up, especially in, couples counseling, or for people who are exploring kink dynamics or whatever. What tools are not out there in terms of education that you feel like would be helpful? What is missing in that context? And there is a huge gap right now, especially in what I'm seeing in higher level education, where we're not teaching somatics. And I think there is such a huge connection between mind and body. And I think noticing and acknowledging that integration is absolutely essential to healing. So first of all, I'm making a push for more somatic psychology to be taught in therapeutic programs, but it really does teach us that the body, it's not just the site of experience, it's also where a lot of our history is stored, and how we hold these patterns of attachment, of trauma, of relational adaptation in our posture, in our breath. And so even, as we just spoke about, before we can name exactly what has happened, the body has already explored it and felt it. The body is a primary participant in meaning making, and we need to figure out how we incorporate that into our communication and what it means for us to process emotions.
I recognize there's definitely a divorce between what's going on in our mind and what's going on in our body.
Yeah.
I do not know if that is a long-term survival instinct thing that as we evolved, or is that cultural norm now is to ignore your body?
It's becoming more of a cultural norm, because we are being taught that we require to prioritize a lot of things, because hustle culture, or repressing a lot of parts of ourselves, simply
or hating your body.
Yes.
Being taught to hate your body.
100%.
Specifically women, but now I see it over the past few years moving into men as well.
I'd agree. And that divorce and disconnect is only going to continue to rupture unless we bring greater awareness to somatics and taking a somatic lens to how we're processing emotions. And so I'm grateful. I'm seeing a trend that more therapists, especially this way newer generation of therapists, have a greater awareness of it and are starting to integrate it more. But as far as, like upper level curriculum and stuff, there's still a place where we need to integrate it. So it's about raising attention for that and making sure that it does get into more therapeutic programs.
Totally. I think like that is the change we need to see and be more aware of. It's also hopeful because I feel like that's what you and I, like, if we're out here doing it and we know more people are out here doing it, hopefully that change is coming. It's difficult work.
It is.
Are you talking to anyone who does EMDR therapy?
Yes, I have been exploring EMDR therapists, because that's also a great way of integration. And somatics and EMDR, different modalities, but same, incorporating the physical. And I really personally tend to go away from Cartesian dualism, the idea that the mind and the body are separate, and am in favor of more integrated approaches to healing when we talk about physical and emotional safety. And so it is inspiring for me to see more methods like EMDR become popularized and further integrated.
I've done EMDR therapy. It is the toughest therapy I have ever done.
It's intense.
And if you explain to someone that you really barely talk about the issue, you just think about it and move your eyes or tap in a certain way and then change what you're thinking about. It sounds like a simpleton game. It sounds like a kindergarten game that you learn to play. It is the farthest thing from it. It's like there's an emotional hangover from it, but it works.
It works. And it's interesting because I love what you said about that emotional hangover. There's also that integration period afterwards, right? It's almost like you need aftercare from that experience
Yes,
because it's so
exactly.
intense. Yeah.
Do you know sometimes in the kink world, there's this argument about whether or not you need aftercare, right? And I ask a lot of people this question, whether or not it's provided. I mean, that's up to certain people, whether they're willing to play with it or not. But do you think that type of power exchange and then getting back out of power exchange into equilibrium or whatever you want to call it, do you think it requires aftercare?
I would encourage the person to center their own agency and choice. And if someone's adamant about no aftercare whatsoever, trust their voice on that. I also think that there is a huge aspect of integrating the experience, the power dynamics at play. The aftercare is incredibly important in. So I would be curious, word of the day, as to why someone would be against aftercare. But if that is part of their process, I think that's also incredibly valid.
Valid. But is it valid? Because I used to be I don't need aftercare person, but I think that was from my work as a pro. Yeah. And I don't think that I didn't need aftercare. I think that I was too focused on I'm doing a job. I think that's why I'm so curious about it now as someone who's like an I don't need aftercare person to this is what I need now. And what I need is I need you to be available to text me the next day because I want to be able to reach out and know I'm going to hear from you. Right. And if you can't facilitate that, I can't play with you. So I'm aware of that now. That wasn't really an option as a pro. And because I wasn't just a pro dom, I was also a pro sub, which is, I've talked about that. Different world, different expectations. But it made me think I didn't need aftercare. As I grow older, I'm realizing that was a mental block. You're right. People should have agency to decide. Like I had agency to decide then, but it was that curiosity piece is so important of like,
always
why?
Curiosity.
Yeah. Like could aftercare make things feel better? Does aftercare make things feel worse? If so, why? What's coming up?
I mean, I'm not in a place to prescribe mandated aftercare for anything, but based on the fundamentals of psychological safety, in BDSM, you are creating scenes where you are intentionally creating scenes of potential rupture, right? And rupture and repair. Yeah. And so you need that psychological safety for the system to revert back. Otherwise, it'll go to its adaptive survival strategies. I don't want to make any overarching prescriptions on where, someone denies aftercare, they are going into survival mode. No. Yeah. But it can also be worth examining, is this just how my body has learned to protect itself? And in negotiated power scenes, these ruptures, they can be subtle, but it's even after the scene, the task in that moment is not to pathologize any of this, but to attune to it and to really reflect, what do I actually need in this moment versus what have I been prescribed to tell myself that I need?
And it's difficult because you're the one who prescribed it to yourself.
Yep. Something that I'm learning as I get older is it's no longer about learning, it's about unlearning. And that is just as much work.
Unlearning is everything, because what you're unlearning is the safety mechanisms that aren't serving you, which is the foundation of your work. Oh, look at how full circle every sentence
always
becomes
comes
here.
back.
Yeah.
It's a loop.
I guess on that point, who's doing it well? Like, what's the poster child of couple or an individual, I guess, who's feeling safe in a relationship? Obviously, we've talked about attachment styles. There's the securely attached person. And I'm interested in the person who is able to move into securely attached. Yes. The work they've done. I know people who grew up in such an environment that they just became securely attached.
I cannot name a poster child for secure attachment because at the end of the day, you know what secure is for you, right? I can speak a lot to the conditions that can get you there and would love to speak more about attachment styles and all the goodness that goes into that. At the end of the day, it's about co-creating mutual safety. And so let's talk about what that looks like in practice, right? That means both people, regardless of their role, I'm just talking relationally, are able to track their own regulation and have an awareness of the others. So this is an ongoing dialogue that may not be verbal. There's also a physical and somatic component to this, but it's constantly going on between nervous systems. So in secure relational dynamics, and we can talk about this in terms of well-negotiated kink dynamics or in terms of any relationship, right? It's mutual safety that's built on attunement, there's adaptability, and there's shared responsibility. So one partner's containment is never imposed without negotiation. It's offered, it's checked, and it's received. And so what does this look like when we play it out? This means asking questions like, are we in sync? Is this serving both of us? And what do you need from me right now? And you can get to a point, especially negotiated dynamics, where, for example, the dom learns the needs of the sub and is able to anticipate that and push the limits to that edge. And another part of this, based on the conversation that we just had, it means building those rituals of return. So this can either be in aftercare and integration, in time to reflect, to name what comes up. Because the funny thing about memory, and this trips me up all the time, is when we remember things, we are not remembering the event itself, rather the last time we remembered it.
Oh, yeah.
So that is colored by all of your experiences, by your feelings, by everything you have integrated in the time from when the original event happened to the time that you last remembered it. And we're constantly building on that memory cycle. And naturally, that is going to bring up more emotions, a lot of really crunchy things that we have to work through, right? And so sometimes taking that space to reflect is absolutely necessary, because you might have something brought up for you that wasn't at all there in the moment it happened, but it's something that came up through the processing. It's dialogical ethics. It's our sense of self is not static, but co-created. And so this is why attachment and relational security are so important, because when we are remaining in ethical relationship to another's experience, the safety that emerges, it's not passive, but it's dynamic.
Oh my goodness. I'm like having such light bulb moments, or just I'm having a reaction in my body to all of this, because it's very affirming when you think, like, as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, I definitely have. And I would say it's a core memory that has informed how I feel about my life and my body, specifically my body. Every time someone says something, it just attaches itself to that core memory. When I was 6 years old, my mom told me to not eat in front of my dad because he thought I was putting on weight. And I think she said fat. I remember where I was. Definite core memory. I'm very close with my mom. It's like I've talked to her about it, but I remember that's when I became aware of my body, and I was 6 years old. I did not feel good about myself because I didn't know to be aware of my body until this moment, and that's not the best way to become aware. Now, it is one of the biggest triggers. No one can say anything to me about my weight at all, or it derails everything. And I get emotional talking about it because I put thousands of dollars, multiple therapy types into trying to get over it. And then someone can say something. And it's partially what led to the end of my last relationship, was a comment about my body that I just couldn't get past. And it brings up, well, why did the person feel the need to talk about my body? All of this is to say, you talking about, it's not just that one memory from when I was 6 years old. It's every time someone says something, it's like I get a push pin and I'm like, let me add that to that memory. So now I have this Pinterest board of pain that I have created and amplified. And the way you put that just really stuck with me right now, because that memory is like, you're actually remembering the last time you thought about it. When I tie it to the fact that, and I'm only thinking about it when I'm in pain, I put my hands over my face because I felt like the need to hide from myself in that moment. Thank you for listening to that story and allowing
thank you
me
for
to
sharing that. Yeah, and the only reflection I have to that is you are not alone. We all have our Pinterest boards of pain. I would love to coin that. You got to coin that. That's a fantastic phrase. And we all have our triggers and the things that we circle back to, and they stick with us.
Yes.
They stick with us. And it's about acknowledging the presence that those memories have in our lives, that the grief that we sometimes have over those experiences, and recognizing that grief in and of itself is an attachment event.
Ooh, as in it's an attachment event that we attach to any type of grief. Yeah. I relate to that for sure. Also, I think I should keep it in because I think it's a good example of exactly what you're saying.
Of course, I think anyone who is socialized as a woman can experience or resonate with body image issues. I know I absolutely struggle with body image growing up and have my Pinterest board of pain, of memories, of, specific events. And it can even be things of family members who I dearly love who have made comments that were incredibly hurtful to me. And like you said, your mom probably did not have bad intentions. Something that I always try to keep in mind in terms of parents is this is their first time moving through the world as humans too.
And I'm the eldest. She was younger than me when she said that sentence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And we have to recognize that our parents are given a certain toolkit. No one has the exact rule book on how to raise kids. And it's, you work with what you got. But also there's so much power to acknowledging those memories and how they've shaped you. And something that I've experienced growing up, finding comfortability within myself, is recognizing those experiences in my youth. And finally admitting that they were hurtful, because I am so quick to brush things off and say, oh, no, I'm fine. That didn't get to me. That doesn't hurt. And trying to put up this wall of self-protection. So for me, a lot of my work that I'm going through is admitting to those crunchy spots. And vulnerability is so difficult, and it's also a superpower. And so I think when you're able to tap into that and expose those parts of yourself that I know I try to hide for so long, there can be an incredible release in that.
And it is empowering to face them. Most recently, someone I'm dating saw an old photo of me, and again, probably just didn't understand it, mentioned how I was skinnier back then. And used the words, like the skinnier word itself, which is triggering. So I had my day of like really going through it, but then I addressed it head on in a way of like, hey, let me explain how that made me feel. And let's try not to do that again. And I felt that was me feeling empowered. So although it was a painful day, I have been feeling better about my handle on it. Sort of like the work I've been doing is paying off because I worked through it with someone else and then moved past it. But it's also, I want to call out that it's not totally without consequence, because I also immediately lost 5 pounds based on that. So it's sort of like it's a mixed bag, and progress, I think, looks different. And the progress that I hope to make 10 years from now in this, I hope to continue to grow on it.
Your awareness through all of this is really beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Okay. You should be a coach or is that the goal, to be would you be a therapist? Would that?
Yeah, so my path is interesting because I am not going for licensure. I want to be on the theory, writing, speaking side of all of this. So I'm going to you're the first to hear about this. This summer, I am going to start trainings on relational intelligence 101, trauma-informed communication, and the ethics of care. And I want to connect with nonprofits, with organizations, starting the conversation on how are we caring for ourselves and others in this current climate.
Love that. Sounds like it couldn't come at a better time.
Yeah. There's certainly been a push for it, which I'm excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I can't wait to hear more about that when you're ready to launch and go out there.
Coming soon. I'm excited about it.
If people wanted to find you, where can we find you, Aubrey?
The best way to stay in touch with all the updates, subscribe to my newsletter, my website, www.aubreyAust.com/newsletter if you want to subscribe to my monthly newsletter. I'm also on Instagram at Aubrey_Aust. Find me on LinkedIn. I post updates on that. But as my research unfolds, I'm continually using those little corners of the web as my digital library. So if you're interested in this and would like to stay up to date, please stop by, say hi. I'd love for more people to join me on this journey.
Awesome. I will definitely be signing up for your newsletter because I want to follow along. Aubrey, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you. You held space for me. I know you came here, but I've really enjoyed our conversation.
I did as well. Thank you so much for having me. Truly, I followed your content for so long, and it is an absolute dream to be here. So looking forward to staying in touch.
I'm glad we were able to connect. And when is the thesis coming out? Like, is this something that will eventually make its way onto your website, into a newsletter? Like an attachment to the thesis.
Yeah, I'll give you the dream. Thesis will be published in spring of 2026, and then hopefully we are looking towards a book in the near future.
Well, we will definitely have to have you back on then. I can't wait. I will definitely read the thesis. Thank you so much, Aubrey.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who might find it interesting. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out. Email info@thekinkconsultant.com. Until next time, keep on kinking on.